What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Thursday, October 13th, 2016. Yes, we are once again live for our broadcast. And a little bit of an explanation of what's going on here. As you may have remembered from a couple of weeks ago, we had a new blessed event in our family, and we were invited to visit with the family and basically just have a really good time with them. And while I'm talking to you about this, apparently Hillary's people are once again trying to jam this website so people can't get to the BAM user and all the rest of it. They really are such children over there. Alrighty, so anyway, getting on back to the story. Believe it or not, we wound up staying in a town called, I kid you not, Santa Claus, Indiana. And apparently, at one point, they wanted to be this year-round Santa's Village kind of attraction, which are fairly common on the mainland. And it didn't really take off as a tourist attraction, but the town just sort of kept that whole feel of Christmas time the year round. And, you know, it's not in your face, buy something. It's just the decor and the atmosphere was actually very pleasant. We enjoyed it. That was the good news, along with seeing the family. The bad news is we did a red-eye flight from Honolulu to Denver on United Airlines. I think United's new motto needs to be bringing back the days of travel as a hardship, because it was just incredibly uncomfortable. And somebody did a really stupid thing on their new 777 seats. In order to cram some more seats in there, remember how the buttons and everything used to be on the side of the armrest? Well, since they're jamming you into these seats now, there's no room for you to get your fingers down and see the buttons or even feel them. So they put the buttons on the top of the armrest. And that means that when you are using the armrest as an armrest, you start hitting those buttons by accident. And the lights go off and on, and the flight attendant call thing comes on, and it's a huge amount of confusion. And on the return flight, the flight crew was actually announcing ahead of time, we know the armrests, you want to put your arms on there, but you can't do it. You'll hit the call button, so please don't push that button unless you really need it. All it was going to take is a little tiny plastic door that goes over the buttons, and then you could use the armrest as an armrest. Our armrests would not fold up, which they're supposed to. It was just a terrible, terrible experience all the way along. And so we got back late last night, and we're all stiff and sore and everything, but we had a really good time. And it was nice to kind of get away from the madness and all the attempts by Hillary's people to shut our website down, which they're still trying to do. But again, it just tells us how desperately panicked they are. They're just in a blind panic right now, and nobody's believing the corporate media propaganda anymore. Nobody's believing the corporate media polls. It's just become this huge, huge joke. Alrighty, so let's see. Not too bad. Just looking at that. Let's get into the news here. First of all, our phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, 800-313-9443, and we're seeing this smear machine uncork on Donald Trump. Now, you need to understand, Donald Trump is a billionaire. He has spent his lifetime surrounded by gorgeous models. He married one of them. Nobody has ever accused him of sexual assault up until he became a threat to the Clinton machine. And now it's just pouring out all over the place here. I mean, with Bill Clinton, you know it's been a lifelong thing. As long as Bill Clinton has been in the public eye, he's always grabbing and groping. It's known behavior. And so all of a sudden we have Donald Trump, who was never racist or never sexually assaulting women for his entire life, and now all of a sudden he's a racist and he's assaulting women. So the latest one that came out there, the New York Times ran this story by a woman called Jessica Leeds, who had this story that back in the 1980s, she was sharing a first-class cabin on a plane flight into New York, and Donald Trump flipped up the armrest and began to grab her to the point where she had to go back and sit in coach, which, if you know the sort of people who can spend money on a first-class seat, going back to coach is like, ooh, we have to go to the smelly people. So Anyway, so this was the thing, and the New York Times ran it without any verification whatsoever, and oh boy, do they have egg all over their face. First of all, the phone number for this woman goes to an office of the Clinton Foundation. Okay? Her description of the actual sexual assault are taken almost word for word from the lyrics of a Velvet Underground song. And I went out and I checked this one myself. Okay, back in the 1980s, none of the commercial aircraft going into New York in the first class cabin had armrests that would lift. In fact, the first class seats in the 1980s were separated by several inches, and there'd be this little table between the seats on which you'd put your drinks and your snacks and everything. I found a photo of one to illustrate the article. So this lady is lying from top to bottom, and Trump's lawyers have already filed a cease and desist. They're demanding a complete retraction from the New York Times and an apology for running this story. And it's just fallen apart. They're just shooting as hard and as fast as they can. They're not even checking out whether any of these stories have any legitimacy to them. All right, we're going to take a moment here to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are rejoining our network. We are live today. I'm back from my little whirlwind travels to the mainland and everything. And so this story has already fallen apart. Well, you know the motto of government and the corporate media. If at first you don't succeed, lie, lie again. So up at the Toronto Sun, they just launched an article saying one of their reporters, one of their former reporters who used to work for them, said Donald Trump was forcing his tongue down her throat in 2005. And what they're going to do is they're going to try and pile on in. They're going to have so many women making these accusations that Donald's going to just be totally trying to deal with all of these, and they're all completely false. And look at the way the media is running with these things. Unfounded allegations. At the same time, they gave Bill Clinton a pass for all the women he was attacking. I mean, the corporate media is shredding its own credibility. And Washington Post was running one of these stories, and I put a comment in the section, I sure wish I had a paid subscription to the Washington Post so that I could cancel it. And apparently they handled their comments and emails with some kind of an automated system, because I actually got an email from the Washington Post subscription department saying, we understand you expressed an interest in having a subscription. Oh, my goodness here. Now, there's some other stuff floating around there. You're never going to see it in the corporate media. A video has surfaced from the 2008 campaign where Barack Obama apparently was on his campaign aircraft talking on the phone, and visible very clearly through the front of his trousers is he's got one. And he's not trying to hide it. He's not shy. He's standing there to just show that thing off, and all the reporters there are laughing. But here's the important point. Here's the important point. Okay? We need to stop letting the corporate media tell us that this is important to us. Let's face it, people in positions of power will give free rein to their sexual appetites. John F. Kennedy did it. Lyndon Johnson did it. I sure saw a lot of it when I was working in Hollywood. Wow, people want to have sex. Big news flash, film at 11. Well, maybe not. So, it's time to go on back to what they don't want us looking at. The email server issue, the corruption of the Clinton Foundation, and oh boy, is there a lot of stuff coming out about that. All the dead bodies, the possible treason, selling our secrets to foreign interests, using that weak email server and getting paid through that so-called charitable foundation. The Clinton camp is replaying that stained blue dress that they used to distract you, the American people, from the really dark secret of the Clintons' involvement in the CIA gun and drug running into Arkansas in the 1980s. So fool me once. We're not going to let them play that game again. We'll decide what's going on. All right, let's grab some phone calls. Karen in Maryland, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi there. Good afternoon. My question for you is, if you have a concise answer to this, I would like to know which states specifically are of concern when it comes to accurate election results, and even more specifically, if it can be narrowed down to cities or counties within those states. Which states are not an issue and which states are an issue or a cause of concern?
Well, in a nutshell, the states that are firmly Republican or firmly Democratic are out of play. There's nothing that they can really do in them. The states where we're going to see the election fraud, the states where we're already seeing the election fraud, are the swing states that could very easily go one way or the other. And generally, the election riggers will focus on the areas of highest population density, meaning the cities. And very often one of the giveaways about election fraud is you'll see the rural areas of a state go one way, and then all of a sudden the cities just leap the other way. And so at this point, this is the most fraudulent national election in our nation's history. It's certainly not the first one, but it has really gone completely overboard. And Hillary's people are just out there to win this thing. And everybody has literally bet the farm, if you will, the future, on Hillary winning. The corporate media has to understand that if Donald Trump overcomes the election fraud next month, that the Trump administration is not going to be friendly to big corporate media, are they? They're going to be...
Okay, well, having said that, is there a firm decided upon list of swing states?
Yeah, you can just
because
go...
sometimes I hear, three different numbers. There are like three different lists when it comes to swing states.
Well, it's changing continuously. That's what makes it difficult. Ohio was considered a swing state. Now it's starting to move over solidly to Donald Trump. And as a result, the media is now saying, well, Ohio isn't the bellwether we thought it was going to be, and blah, 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 blah. Okay? It changes all the time.
You.
All right, we're going to let you go and switch over to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Dustin, are you there?
That's all.
Okay.
Hi, Mike. Hi. Hello?
Yes, you're on the air. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Yeah, that's a diversion with Obama's boner and all that crap. People got to worry because, I said this before, we are heading toward a world war because the Russians did the nuke drill with the 40 million people.
Yes.
And then the officials calling back their kids early from overseas. And, Mike, I think that maybe Britain, France, and Germany, certain individuals are sending him signals to prepare, because the U.S. is going to start a war, because if you see tomorrow, Obama's going to make a decision. And that's why Putin's been preparing. They're sending the Panzer units, S-1 NA aircraft over to Syria, 35 to 60 units. And he's been preparing, so that's what I think is going on. Like, France, Germany, certain elements have warned Putin already. That's why he's getting ready.
Well, I think they're warning Putin because I think as long as it was a Cold War and it was just politics and it was abstracted, most of NATO was willing to go along with this thing. But all of a sudden, everybody is waking up and realizing we could be in an actual shooting world war by the end of the year. And for the people in Europe, that's not a good idea because the first two world wars were in part fought on their soil. If you travel around Europe, you can still see the scars on the land, on the buildings from both world wars. They're not ready to have a third one. They want the third one to be fought someplace else and leave them out of it. And so I think we're starting to see a lot of the NATO alliance strain at the leash and say, this is a bad idea. We don't want to go along with this thing. We do not want to be in a war.
Yeah, I see us with a couple of the Baltic nations being it, and there's just no way you're going to defeat the Russians and or the Chinese, which means it would go nuclear. So maybe that's a pause. If Germany and France and Britain step forward, somebody in NATO that pulls out and say, we're not going to do this, maybe that'll cause the United States to think again.
Well, I would like for common sense to break out, but unfortunately, as I mentioned before, we're dealing with a government and a financial system which, based on prior history, is convinced that they can fix this economic nightmare or at least have something to blame for it and save their own cushy jobs, with another world war. And that's why they're pushing so hard. Because without a new world war, the world is turning away from the U.S. dollar hegemonic domination, and that's the only thing holding our economy up. America has lost its manufacturing in quantity and quality. I remember when I was a kid, made in Japan meant the junk, and made in America meant the best. It's completely reversed. Made in Japan is now the best stuff. Made in China is the best stuff. What's coming out of American factories is absolute crud, including our much vaunted weapon systems. And nobody wants our GMO agriculture. And so without some mechanism to force the world to use U.S. dollars loaned at interest, it's all going to come apart. It's only a matter of time.
And I don't know if you'll mention this later about I'm not going to mention anything if you're going to talk about HSBC, talking about a stock market crash.
Yeah, we're going to mention that a little bit later in the show.
Okay, all right, thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. And yes, Hillary's people are still trying to wreck my website. This is what they do. And you know something? Every time they do an attack on somebody's website, like this, whether it's mine or anybody else, they're basically telegraphing that they don't have a debate. They don't actually they couldn't win a debate on the facts and logic and law. They're admitting that the only way they can win is by cheating. So that's what they do. All right, let's go to Tom in Florida. Aloha, Tom. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, good afternoon, Mike. Mike, I want to ask you a question, Mike. Did you see the 8-minute video of Danny Williams Clinton on Matt Drudge in the Breitbart? And why? And will Donald Trump want to bring that young man at his next debate? I believe he'll blow the media out of the water because Donald Trump's got to point to that kid and says to Hillary, does black lives really matter, Hillary? Because Hillary won't even let that kid, Danny Williams Clinton, talk to Bill Clinton. How come Bill Clinton's not acknowledging that kid who looks just like him, Michael? And that is Bill Clinton's son. He admitted that he had a $200 prostitute, a black prostitute, and he got her knocked up. Danny Williams Clinton has an 8-minute video. It's out on Drudge Report right now. Matt Drudge has the video. And I want everybody to know in the next debate, if Donald Trump brings that kid out on that stage and he points out to Hillary, this kid does the Black Lives Matter to you, Hillary? It will blow the media out of the water because the media won't be able to handle it. Because Bill Clinton is the legitimate father of that kid. That's his son. And the son even has 2 granddaughters he wants Bill Clinton to meet. He's got 2 little girls that he wants Bill Clinton to meet as grandkids. And how come the media ain't talking about that every day? They keep talking about Donald Trump trying to slap some woman's butt. When Bill Clinton was a rapist, Hillary got a 12-year-old girl, rapist off on charges, Michael. That's where the real story should be at the media. These media criminals, these creatures and creeps are disgusting and despicable. They are despicable. And you know what, Michael? When Donald Trump has the nerve to bring that kid out up on that stage and point out, Hillary, do black lives really matter? Then you start right here with this young man who's your husband's son.
Well, I'll tell you. Hey, whoa, Tom, calm down. You're drinking way too much coffee. I'll tell you the story they're all missing. Bill Clinton is a deadbeat dad. That's where they should take this thing. Nobody's going to be shocked that Bill Clinton was shagging another woman, that he was using prostitutes, that he was doing all this stuff because he's always done it. It's not newsworthy. The correct focus to put on this thing is that Bill Clinton is a deadbeat dad, fathered a child, and just walked. And it's not like he doesn't have the money where he could be taking care of his kid.
Donald Trump does that like you're saying, they'll blow the media's brains out. They won't know what to do if Donald Trump says exactly what you said. You're a deadbeat dad, Clinton. You're a deadbeat, and Hillary is responsible for this. And look at what he's doing. Hillary's talking about the Catholics. Look at how the media, these Democrat rats are talking about the Catholic faith. The Democrats, this right there, should be losing the whole 100% of the Catholic vote. The Catholic vote should go 100% for Donald Trump. Look what Hillary's talking about the Catholics.
Tom, first of all, you got to calm down if you're going to call in here again. Second of all, I'm going to have to let you go because we got to take a commercial break. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And boy, the tantrum squad is really out there trying to prove that they will rule the world here. And so I'm having to deal with all of that. They're trying to really wreck the site here. And again, it illustrates the fact that they're scared. They know they cannot win an honest election, therefore they must lie, cheat, steal, do whatever else is out there. Okay, they have managed to do some really serious damage here, so let's just do that. Alrighty, getting on back here. There's a group out there called Project Veritas, and they are masters of hidden camera catching people saying things. And for all this talk about, oh my goodness, Donald Trump did this, and Donald Trump did that, and Donald Trump did blah, blah, blah. And they caught one of Hillary Clinton's staffers joking about how, you know, the standards for behavior in the campaign are very low, as we could tell from the hackers. And he's actually saying on video that, you know, the only thing that would get him fired is he'd have to grab the rear end of somebody named Emma twice. He could do it once and not get fired. And yet they're out there saying, oh, Donald Trump back in 2005, and he did this and he did that. Now, getting on to the story about Danny Williams. And I know we got callers waiting. I'm going to get to you in just a minute. CNN has effectively ordered a total blackout on this entire story. And apparently Jeff Zucker is saying this is a non-story. Snopes is already out there saying this is unproven, this is unconfirmed. And Snopes just shredded what little remained of their credibility. We know they're gatekeepers. They're always out there pushing the official government line on really controversial things like 9/11. So let's go back to the phones. Roseanne in North Carolina, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. First of all, welcome back. You were so missed. You really, so much stuff was going on, and you weren't here. So anyway, with that aside.
Well, I'll tell you what was really frustrating. Where I was staying in this town, Santa Claus, my AT&T on-air modem wouldn't work. I couldn't reach any AT&T. Somebody tried to loan me one that was for Verizon. That was very intermittent. I was literally in this one part of the country where you actually can't get internet over the cell phone system.
Oh, my goodness. I don't know how you survived that. Because there's been stuff going on every day.
Yes. Yeah, I know. Well, I did get to watch. I did get to watch the debate, and it was wonderful the way Donald Trump turned it around. Everybody was out there just expecting that he was going to crater on this.
We were jumping up and doing high fives and everything the whole time.
Yeah, that was just great. He did turn it around.
My comment was when I first started hearing about the Jessica Leeds story, and one of the aspects of her story was that the flight attendants plucked her out of coach and gave her a first-class empty seat. I've traveled a lot in my career, and they hand out first class with an eyedropper when you don't pay for it. So I don't understand what would even cause these flight attendants to go back to coach and pluck her out of the crowd and say, oh, you're deserving. So that
well, I mean, let's be fair. It does happen, but usually there has to be a really good reason. When Claire and I were coming out here for our honeymoon on Ryanair, I'd made up these funny T-shirts. On the front it said, we're not on drugs, we're newlyweds. And on the back it said, the church service is over, now comes the kinky part. And the flight attendants were making jokes about having to keep an eye on us and make sure we're not going to the restroom together. But they made up for it. They moved us into first class and gave us a free bottle of champagne and everything. There was another time when I was taking a flight, we were stuck on the ground, and this was back when I was a magician. And so I was entertaining the coach passengers with balloon animals and magic tricks and everything, and after they finally got the plane in the air, they put me into first class. It does happen. But we already know that the story about how Donald Trump lifted the armrest could not possibly have happened, because the first class accommodations in all the airlines serving New York in the 1980s, those armrests didn't lift up. There were these little tables that were actually between the seats. It could not have happened as she described. And the fact that she had to plagiarize lyrics out of a song for the story really tells you everything.
Ridiculous.
All right, we're going to take another break.
All
right, I'm going to hold you. I'm going to hold you over the break. Don't hang up. We'll come right back to you. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to finish up with Roseanne real quick, take a few more phone calls, and then we're going to shut the phone lines for a while because I got a lot of stuff I need to share with you. Roseanne, you had one more thing.
Yeah, all I wanted to say is that I know that some of your listeners are in North Carolina, and we are having Trump sign-waving rallies every Wednesday on 540 and 6 Forks. So if they want to come out in the afternoon rush hour, that's when we're having them, and got an awful lot of support yesterday. So.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. For some reason, when I was in Indiana, everybody loved my Hillary for Prison T-shirt. I have no idea why, but nowhere near the negative reactions I get around liberal Hawaii. All right, we're going to switch over to Glenn in Philadelphia. Aloha, Glenn. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike.
Hello, Glenn. How are you doing?
Yeah. All right, thanks. I wanted to address the question of Donald Trump filing a civil action about these false allegations.
Mm-hmm.
It can be pretty hard to get legal traction against the long-established precedent of the Pee Wee Herman "I know you are, but what am I" defense.
Well, I mean, there is absolutely no question the New York Times engaged in outright libel, and I know they're going to rely on the absence of malice defense. But you know, I think that. I think the value of the lawsuit isn't in any eventual civil settlement. It's to send the message to the United States that you shouldn't be trusting any of these stories coming out of the corporate media right now.
Right. But the thing is, that was supposed to be a joke, and I guess it just didn't work.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, we're going to switch over to Alex.
Hang on.
Okay, Glenn.
Real quick. The other day when you were away, the rerun that was playing was the one where you were saying, "Pay no further attention to Assange. He's a shill." And on the very day when pay dirt was finally being hit and stuff was starting to come out,
yeah,
oh, that's ironic. You know, that was very odd.
It was. I'm going to have to take back some of the bad things I was saying about Assange. I still don't know that I would want to really trust him, but at the moment he does seem to be delivering right now. Or at least WikiLeaks is delivering. It may not even have anything all that much to do with Assange. He's still in the Ecuadorian embassy. This is the organization that's releasing all this stuff. And so far, there's a lot of interesting stuff coming on out. Okay?
Absolutely. All righty, Mike. Take care.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. Alex in Florida, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I think that the WikiLeaks Podesta email number 3774 is very, very important.
Okay, well, I haven't memorized them by number. Please tell us what it says.
Well, that's the one where Hillary Clinton is basically telling Podesta in his Gmail about recognizing that Saudi Arabia funds ISIL. Did you see that email?
No, I haven't seen that one yet. I mean, I'm just starting to wade through them myself.
It is the most important one. Will you tell me your email address? I'll send it to you. I tried to send it to you through your website, but it's not working.
Okay, well, it's WRH@WhatReallyHappened.com. A lot of strange problems going on with the internet. Have you noticed that when you go over to YouTube, the Hillary Clinton videos all play wonderfully smooth, and anything that's critical of the Clintons or supporting Trump, it's a stuttering, oh, we've got a playback error, wait a few minutes and try again. There's definitely a bias there. I have yet to see a single pro-Hillary Clinton video have any technical issues whatsoever from YouTube, but with the Donald Trump videos and ads, or the videos that are exposing the Clinton crimes, technical issues, sorry, it's technical error, It's got to be your fault.
Michael,
your ISP is inferior. Blah 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 blah.
Hey, Michael.
Yes.
I did want to. Is it okay if I tell you what the email is under YouTube? This guy lays it out great. I'm going to send it to you.
Okay.
But just for the listeners, his name's Michael Trim. TRIMM.
Okay.
And if you put his name in YouTube, it will be the story on email number 3774. Hillary reveals Saudi Arabia is funding ISIS secretly, and it is incriminating. When I saw it, I can't believe that she wouldn't go to jail. That this could bring down down the government, as you talk about.
Well, unfortunately, when the entire government is a criminal enterprise, no, they're not going to do it. We saw that already with James Comey. He listed the felony violations of Title 18 Hillary Clinton committed, and then said, we're not going to prosecute. Loretta Lynch was saying, we're not going to prosecute or investigate for treason, but we're going to sue those global warming deniers out of business.
That's right. I'm going to send you this email. It is so important that people look at this posting because this guy lays it out very well. Like Hillary's confidant. What is her name? Her top name?
Huma Abedin.
Huma Abedin. You know, she's Saudi Arabian. Did you know that?
I believe that's her ancestry. Yes. And she's been involved with the Muslim. She's been with the Muslim Brotherhood and worked
That's
politically
right.
On those things. Anyway, listen, Alex.
That's right.
Yeah, I'll wait for the email.
Please put it up.
I will look at it when. Okay, Alex, I'll look at it when you send it to me. I got to get through these other phone calls. We got a bunch of stuff to talk about. Clinton, Las Vegas. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike, I was looking at your poll. Between you and Trump, and all I can tell your audience is that a vote for Mike is a vote for Hillary. And
well, I just did that as a joke. I was punchy, I'm jet lagged, and all the rest of it. So I put up a poll: who would you vote for? And I put obviously Clinton and Trump. And because I did have a campaign earlier in the year, I put myself up there. And I know there's no way that I could ever defeat Donald Trump, but I'm rather satisfied at how far ahead of Hillary Clinton I am in the poll. And I did tag it humor and satire. I tagged it humor and satire so nobody could think that this was in any way genuine. I was just having fun.
And it failed. But anyways, were you able to verify that phone number went back to the Clinton Foundation? Because I would not let that go if I was Donald.
You mean from the late? Yeah, that was verified in a couple of different places. I mean, the phone number's the phone number. It's all listed.
I would demand that go public and make sure that as many people as he can get, knowing that.
Clint, you need to understand, the corporate media will not do anything to help Donald Trump. And that's why it's up to us in the independent media. It's up to you, the American people, to get this information out there. The establishment has literally declared war on the American people to reduce us under absolute despotism, as it says in the Declaration of Independence, and we need to fight back. If you're sitting on your rear end waiting for somebody else to make things better, you are a fool.
Yeah. Didn't they have to retract a similar thing against John McCain back in 2008?
Yeah, they did, and they'll always print the retractions on page 162 underneath the obituaries, and they'll do the same thing here. Okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Because he needs to keep a lot of lawyers going. He also needs to go around and all these people he needs to put an injunction on these that's verified that they're registering dead people. Multiple people are voting. He's got to keep some lawyers going.
Well, he's got a huge legal team, and they've got their work cut out for them. But again, with all of these voter ID states that do not require voter ID, there's almost nothing they can do. And you need to remember that consent decree by the courts, where Republicans, and Donald Trump is a Republican, cannot investigate Democratic vote fraud without the permission of the Democratic National Committee. It's one of the most bizarre things I have ever heard of in U.S. legislation, but that's literally the way the laws are written. The GOP is not allowed to investigate Democratic vote fraud. So it's up to us in the independent media. It's up to us who are not really Republicans or working for the Republican Party. We have to go on out and dig it out and put it in front of everybody, and we're going to do that. Clint, we're going to let you go. We're going to take one more phone call from Bernard in Vancouver, and then we're going to shut the phone lines for a while because I've got a bunch of stuff I need to get to. So, Bernard, what's on your mind?
Yeah, just briefly, I wanted to make 2 points, but I want to also say that I consider you and RBN the real media that does an actual coverage. No, just 2 quick things, one Canadian and one American. On Canada's medical system, which would seem like a dream, because only in British Columbia is there any fees paid by the public, and it's very liberal, and you're never questioned about coverage, and the fees don't change. And it was only brought in because Canada at the time had a system which was not totally unlike Germany and Japan, where there was public funding. So that half of the new money was created by the Governmental Bank of Canada. So they were able to bring in the Canada Pension Plan, Guaranteed Income Supplement for seniors, and the medical coverage. But the problem is not. You can tell that candidate Trump is not totally and very well informed. The problem is not the waiting list. That's just a little knee-jerk thing you get from the right. The problem is the lack of choice. You know, what good is chemotherapy if it kills more people than it cures? I mean, sure, it's expensive, but it's covered. But the only good for me is that I see what works in the United States, where we have this fantastic choice, because there's actually competition. This is something most people don't understand. But our retired
we don't have a lot of competition down here. We don't have a lot of choice down here. You know, they're now mandating vaccines for all of our kids. They're talking about mandated vaccines for adults. The medical industrial complex is moving to shut down. Even ordinary vitamins require them to be under prescription. They're waging war against people able to make their own medications at home, grow things in their backyard. They even succeeded in getting nanosilver banned for a time. It's all about making money. I mean, these other countries like France and Norway and everything, their governments are genuinely trying to set up programs to help their people. Right now, everything in the United States is all about extracting more wealth from the people to prop up a hopelessly broke and in-debt U.S. government and financial system. That's what it's all about. All of the considerations have gone out the window.
Yeah, you're on top of that 100%. And just briefly, the biggest factor that's not being addressed, Trump's running mate, the address to the evangelicals. I understand there are 70 million Protestant evangelicals in the United States, and if you hear what he said to them, you'll know that none of them will be voting for the Democratic candidate, because with appointment of judges, it would be be a century before they could revisit that controversial issue.
Well, it's even worse than that. Some of the latest leaked emails have Clinton's aides mocking Catholics and evangelical Christianity. These emails are showing what these people really think, what they're really feeling, and it underscores the fact that everything coming out of Hillary Clinton's mouth is just a bald-faced lie to try and win votes. Okay? All right, Bernard, we're going to let you go. Thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to shut down the phone lines for a while because I have got a lot of stuff I need to get through. Now, Donald Trump is out there on the campaign trail, and he's out there saying how the Clinton camp controls the corporate media. He's absolutely right. And it isn't necessarily that the Clintons are controlling the corporate media. It's the CIA. Ever since the end of World War II, the CIA has been running something called Operation Mockingbird. And Operation Mockingbird was a program modeled on the propaganda machines of Nazi Germany to have CIA assets at the top of every single corporate media outlet in order to control what was being given to the public. Now, the CIA is on board with Hillary Clinton for the very simple reason. If she goes down, if she gets arrested, if she loses the election, she's going to go back and say, yeah, the CIA has been selling cocaine to your children for a fast buck going back to the 1980s in Arkansas. And the CIA would not survive that. Donald Trump would have the political support from the American people to do what John Kennedy wanted to do. Shatter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the wind. It has become too dangerous. So has the FBI. They are presuming to run the nation when neither one of them are an elected government. Now, some of the other emails coming on out show that Clinton confidant Philippe Reines discussed the deletion of the emails, proving that Hillary Clinton knew it was illegal when she did it. When she deleted those 33,000 subpoenaed emails, she knew she was breaking the law. They were under subpoena. That's obstruction of justice. There's your intent to commit a crime, Mr. Comey. More information in the emails. Yes, Hillary is fully on board. A one-world government. The single golden throne for planet Earth on which her little butt will sit. More information about how Wall Street buys influence on the Democratic Party, and you're not going to see that in the corporate media. All you're going to get from the corporate media is, Trump said a bad word, Trump said a bad word, Trump's being accused of sexual crimes. That's what you should think about. Forget about all that corruption and vote rigging and influence peddling. That's not important to you, the American people. You, the American people, you care about good, clean language and political correctness, and that's what you should be. And it goes on and on and on. An absolute, unquestioned, pay-for-play moment has surfaced in the emails. This is from the Podesta emails, November 2011. And basically, there was an invitation from Sheikh Mohammed in Saudi Arabia to President Clinton to come to this conference in Ethiopia. And what is in the emails is, yeah, we'll do it if this guy sends us a $6 million donation. That's it. I mean, it's just right out there in the open. Now, there's a story breaking here over on Red State Watcher. There's one of the anonymous hackers. Looks like they're about to go public, first of all, with who they are, because the Hillary campaign is out there saying, this is all Russia. You shouldn't read any of these leaked emails or you're on the side of the Russians. And we'll come get you for being on the side of the Russians. And they're talking about how they have copies of the missing 33,000 emails. We'll be right back after these few. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. So we're talking about this story coming out of Red State Watcher, where one of the many hackers that have been getting into Hillary's emails, DNC emails, Podesta emails, are announcing basically they have the 33,000 deleted emails, the ones that Hillary said were about yoga classes and, you know, Chelsea and all innocent, and this anonymous is getting ready to release them. And, of course, there's a lot of smoke out there to try and keep us confused. There's one reason to pay attention to this, and that is because they made this announcement here a few hours before the New York Times ran that bogus story where Jessica Leeds was accusing Donald Trump of lifting the armrest in a first-class cabin seat and groping her and forcing her to run to the back of the cabin. And, of course, as we've documented, first-class seats in the 1980s, the armrest didn't lift. There was a little table between. But in this announcement that came out before the New York Times story, it actually says right here, Hillary Rodham Clinton is attempting to pay or force a woman to lie that Trump sexually assaulted her. So this gives this a little bit of credibility. But there's a lot of information that is coming on out, and they're saying they're going to start releasing the 33,000 emails in multiple batches between now and the 1st of November. And their goal is to catch the DNC way too late to replace Hillary, unless Hillary suffers a sudden medical emergency and Payne gets to be the Democratic nominee, in which case he's definitely going to lose to Donald Trump. So, getting on back to this, Podesta emails, basically John Podesta wrote to Hillary's campaign manager that Hillary hates everyday Americans. And we've seen all these stories reported about how Hillary was abusive to her Secret Service protective detail. In fact, one of the thought for the day was a quote from one of these books that these former Secret Service people have written about what a terrible human being she is in private. When there are no voters around, when there are no donors around, when there are no cameras around, her real personality comes on out. And remember, character is how you behave when nobody is watching you. That's the real measure of your character. Now, apparently over at the New York Post, they're running some of the WikiLeaks emails confirming once again that people who donated to the Clinton Foundation got special favors from the U.S. State Department. It doesn't get more obvious than that. Now, here's where it gets really kind of interesting. And the Tantrum Squad is back if you're trying to reach the website at the same time. Another email with Podesta. And it's a very bizarre exchange using the expression wet works. And Podesta had this email. We're going to get into this after station identification. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And hour number 2. We're still closing the phone lines because we got a lot of stuff to go through. And here's an interesting email from the Podesta release. And by the way, nobody has come forward to say that any of these things are fake. The Clinton campaign's sole response to this is all the fault of the Russians. The Russians are doing this. You don't read these emails or you're a Russian stooge, and we're going to throw the Russian stooges into FEMA camps, or whatever it is going to say. So here's the email exchange. It sounds kind of weird. And it begins under the subject line, thanks. That's it. So on Tuesday, February 9th of this year, John Podesta is writing to Steve Elmendorf, and it's a single line in the message, didn't think wet works meant pool parties at the vineyard. Now, wet works is a euphemism for assassination. And then Elmendorf writes back, I am all in, sounds like it will be a bad night. We all need to buckle up and double down. And the reason this email is alarming, this email trade about wet work took place on February 9th. Justice Scalia died on the 12th, just 3 days later, under very suspicious circumstances. His body was embalmed within 24 hours, no autopsy allowed. I think it's time to put Justice Antonin Scalia on the dead bodies list on the basis of this email. So, now then, Jill Stein has waded into the fray and is now, for all intents and purposes, she's just endorsed Donald Trump. And she says it really comes on down to a nuclear war with Russia. If Hillary's elected, she's already said, war with Iran, war with Russia. She loves war as long as somebody else is dying in it. It's not going to be her kid. Oh, you're never going to see Chelsea holding an M16 on the front line anywhere. Oh, no. Chelsea's too precious. She's being groomed to inherit the White House somewhere down the road. We can't risk precious little Chelsea in the war zones. That's what your kids are for. And, of course, Donald Trump has made no secret of the fact that as president, his goal will be to restore relations with Russia and China. He wants to be friends with them. He wants to go back to business, trade, assuming that the U.S. can come up with something that the Russians would want to buy. They certainly don't want our GMO. Now, last week we were talking about this very strange story where there was a man who had been arrested and charged for smuggling arms into Libya. And then all of a sudden, charges were dropped. He's now gone public and saying that he was part of a State Department-approved gun-running operation to Libya and to Syria. And that's why the charges were dropped, because he was going to defend himself by saying this was authorized. Remember I think it was called the Martinez defense during Watergate, where one of the Watergate burglars was judged not guilty because they honestly believed they were working on a sanctioned U.S. government intelligence project. So, alrighty, boy, oh boy, the tantrum people are really pounding on the server very hard today. You can almost smell the fear coming off of these people. I mean, they're bouncing their attacks through servers in Aruba and all the rest of this stuff. They must really be scared out of their minds. Anyway, that's why they let this gun smuggler go, because going to court would have blown the lid off of the fact that President Obama and Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton were sending weapons to ISIS and Al-Qaeda in Syria at the same time you were being told ISIS and Al-Qaeda are our enemies in the war on terror. It's horrible. And there's another one of the emails coming on out where Hillary is saying, we have to have two narratives. There's the one for those of us who are doing things and our donors and our friends on Wall Street. And then there's the narrative we have to give to the people to keep them in their place. She's openly admitting we have a secret government. They don't want us to know what they are doing. That's why she would never release the transcripts of her Wall Street speeches, because what she's saying in those speeches is directly opposite of what she's telling you, the voters. Now, Donna Brazile is denying that Hillary Clinton was given the questions ahead of the CNN town hall. So now that it's been officially denied, we know that it is true. And Kathleen Willey is out there. She just released a video to women saying, would you stay with a rapist? Why would you stay with a rapist? Why did Hillary stay with Bill knowing what he's really, really like? In fact, covering up for him, protecting him. We're going to take a second here to do a shout-out to our honor affiliates who are rejoining our network. We're talking about the political campaign. We're talking about Kathleen Willey, one of Bill Clinton's confirmed sexual assault victims, who is out there saying, what sane woman would stay with a husband who rapes and assaults women on a regular basis? Why would Hillary cover up for that? And Breitbart is reporting that Willey has demanded Hillary Clinton submit to a lie detector test about the campaigns that were waged against the women who were accusing Bill Clinton of sexual assault. And the tactics they were using, they're familiar to any one of us who's stood up to the Clintons over the years. Their pets were killed, the tires on their cars slashed, the late-night phone calls coming in and saying, we know where your children are. All right, we're going to grab one phone call real quick. Bob in Las Vegas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey there, Mike. How are you?
Biodegradable. What's on?
Well, I know I'm speaking for all your viewers when I say you were greatly missed the first few days of the week. So glad to.
Well, I really, it was one of those things. It happened when it happened. I didn't want to be absent this close to the election, but it was just one of those things we really couldn't change.
Yeah. Mike, this mainstream media is really showing their true colors. First, I heard nothing or saw nothing about the massacre of those 5 children in western Syria who were killed by the terrorists who were holding eastern Aleppo. I'm sorry, I said western Aleppo. Those who are holding eastern Aleppo hostage. I saw nothing of that story in the mainstream media. And, if it makes a difference, I sent a letter to an email to CNN and the New York Times, and I said, you both represent today's Pravda and Izvestia. That's what you represent in today's modern times. But quickly, I wanted to get your opinion on the debate. I don't know why, you may have mentioned this, I just got back in, it was out. I don't know why Trump didn't interrupt or didn't reply to Hillary when she had said she was for a no-fly zone, that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs himself had said, if you declare a no-fly zone, it means war with Russia.
Well, he should have jumped on there, but there were a lot of missed opportunities. He may have been distracted by the fact that he may have thought that Hillary meant a no-fly zone for the fly that lit on her face during that second debate. And by the way, the fly has been found dead and declared a suicide.
In Marcy Park.
In Fort Marcy Park, yes.
And also, Hillary herself said in one of those speeches to her friends, the banksters, that a no-fly zone would mean basically a lot of Syrian civilian deaths.
Yes.
So she knows what that entails.
Yeah, but she doesn't care about the civilians. That's not a fact. She hates ordinary people. John Podesta said so. She hates ordinary people. She's one of these elites who think the planet would be much better off if 90% of the human race were to vanish tomorrow.
Yeah. And, Mike, did you hear the story or read the story? I saw it in RT about the U.S. Allegedly is going to give free passage to 1,000 of these ISIS guys in Mosul into Syria.
It was 9,000 was the number I heard. And they're going to do it. They're going to do it so these ISIS fighters, can join in the fight against Assad in Syria. And by the way, the United States does not have Syria's permission to be importing soldiers, into Syria to fight against the government.
Of course not. We've entered it a long time ago, but I'll just say this. We've entered evil empire status, this government. I'm not going to say the country, the government.
Game of Thrones has got nothing on these people.
No, not at all. Not at all. Okay, that's all I got, Mike. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. And as long as we're talking about TV shows, I got to tell you, Westworld is my new favorite TV show. The writing is absolutely brilliant. May not be suitable for children, but it's a brilliant show. Anthony Hopkins is just doing an amazing job. Anyway, so unsolicited plug there. Getting on back to the news. Latest study is showing 1.8 million dead people are still registered to vote. This from the Pew Center. And they probably have not even begun to find the true scale of the problem. 24 million registrations are either invalid or inaccurate. Remember, somebody was getting on into these databases and changing registrations so that people who wanted to vote for Bernie Sanders showed up at the polling places and were told they couldn't vote. Their registration was invalid. But, of course, that was Vladimir Putin who was sabotaging Bernie Sanders to help Hillary Clinton, and then he changed his mind, and he's working to support Donald Trump, and that's the story we're getting. Now, this story came out of NPR. And NPR is already setting the stage for the same thing we have seen every other crooked election. They're acknowledging there are all these problems. Dead people are registered to vote. They don't mention the fact that it's been documented somebody's voting in the dead people's name. And basically NPR's take is there's really no evidence that this is leading to widespread voter fraud. It probably won't mean anything. Because we get that. Every time there's a stolen election in this country, and every time vote fraud is exposed, the corporate media can be counted on to say, well, yeah, there were some irregularities, but trust us, it did not really change the outcome. Which is an absolutely unsupportable statement, because if you find vote fraud going on in an election, you cannot assume you found it all. And we know what assume means. So anybody who undertakes a campaign of election fraud does so to change that outcome. And the fact that some of their machinations may be exposed does not necessarily mean that they have failed to change the outcome. In every other country on earth, if the exit polls differ from the official results by more than 2%, it's considered evidence of election fraud by the United Nations and by the U.S. State Department. During the primaries, the exit polls for Hillary Clinton were 20 percentage points low from what the official results were. That's 10 times the threshold to say that these elections were rigged. No. The voters are lying to the exit pollsters. They didn't want to be seen as sexist or something. That's what we get from the corporate media. You know something? In all my years of voting, I have never actually recognized one of the exit pollsters. I have no idea who they are. They have no idea who I am. I don't care what they think of me. I'm going to tell them what I really voted. I don't have a reason to lie to the exit pollsters. It's nonsense. Complete nonsense. All right, we're going to take another phone call. Daniel in Oklahoma. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, thanks for taking my call. I want to let everyone know, listeners know, there is a protest, November 5th, scheduled, an anonymous protest. It's all over social media. And so I just want to let your listeners know. And if anyone can make it who's in that area, that would be great. And another thing, I'm already starting to see, Pence and Trump throw each other under the bus. If you remember in the
I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing that. And you didn't tell us where this anonymous protest is supposed to be held. And by the way, November 5th, that's almost too late to really accomplish much of anything. I mean, right now, this week, these next few days, if we're going to change any voters' minds, it's going to happen in the next week. After that, everybody's mind is going to be made up, and it'll take an earthquake to change.
Well, it's in D.C., by the way.
Okay.
And and I know it's close to the election, but I think it's more, it's a protest about everybody's. It's not only an animal rights protest or a healthy protest against GMO. It's everyone's goals and opinions being broadcasted and shouted out. And but
it sounds to me like a lot of noise. I'm sorry, I hate to be this way. It sounds like a lot of wasted noise. I mean, you've heard of the principle of a whipping post, right? You know, that when you're angry and you can't actually get at the people who are making you angry, that you take your anger out, beating on a wooden post. Our government wants us to take out our anger on pointless, useless actions. And that's kind of the way it is. Anyway, listen, we've got to let you go. Got to get back to the news here. Thank you very much for the phone call. Story coming out of John Rappaport reminding us the election can still be rigged because, unfortunately, a large number of votes, 25% of all the votes, are still going through this GEMS electronic voting system, which is already documented as being fraudulent by Bev Harris over at blackboxvoting.org. One of the most revealing things to come out of this is that internally, while the votes are presented to you as whole numbers, because votes are whole numbers, it's either 1 or 0 per voter, but internally they're being given fractional values, and there can be a fractional multiplier that enhances certain votes' final value, which is then rounded off to a whole number. And it's a very, very clever way of rigging the election that avoids those embarrassments where somebody comes out with negative numbers. Now, there's no legitimate reason for vote counts to be expressed as anything but whole numbers inside the software. The fact that it's being handled as fractions tells you it's crooked. Now, getting on back to Project Veritas, another video that they got was of the New York City Democratic Election Commissioner admitting that voters are being bussed around to multiple voting locations so that they can vote over and over and over again, and they can get away with it because New York does not require ID to vote. Everybody knows the election system is crooked. Nobody wants to do anything about it. So, now then, getting into the war zones. An American warship has hit Yemen's radar sites using cruise missiles, supposedly as retaliation for the failed attempt to launch missiles on American warships. Now, Yemen has denied having anything to do with those. It felt like a false flag from the beginning to justify a U.S. invasion, and the U.S. official stance is this is punishment for daring to sort of come close to our ships but not actually damaging them. And yet, if you understand strategic necessity, taking out the enemy's radar sites is the first step to a major invasion. So it looks like the U.S. is tired of waiting for Saudi Arabia to actually accomplish anything, to slap those people of Yemen into accepting their internationally approved U.S. puppet regime, and they're going to have a direct full-on invasion into Yemen. And by the way, the U.S. is now saying that once again, Yemen has fired missiles at our ships that missed and went off course, and thankfully isn't it great that the Yemen missiles are so poor quality and such lousy shots? We haven't had a scratch yet. It's a false flag. It's like missiles, torpedoes in the Gulf of Tonkin, or the Spanish mine in Havana Harbor. How many times do you have to be lied to before you're willing to stand up and say to the government, I'm sick and tired of you lying to me? Now, Yemen's Houthis are warning the U.S. against further attacks. Iran is sending warships to the coast of Yemen to try and discourage more U.S. attacks on Houthi radar sites. We could be in a full-on shooting war, world war, by the end of the year. That's how serious this is. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And the caller who called in earlier did send me the videotape regarding email 3774, where Hillary reveals Saudi Arabia is funding ISIS secretly. And Hillary not only did not say, why are you funding our supposed purported enemies, but of course Hillary went on taking money from Saudi Arabia for her foundation and for her election campaigns. Saudi Arabia is one of the biggest donors to the presidency of Hillary Clinton. And I guess it's things like this that has the Tantrum Squad working so hard to try and keep my website off the air right now. And like I said, the more they do that, the more it sends a message. The Hillary campaign is absolutely terrified out of their minds. They can't control your brain anymore. They can't just open up a little valve in the top of your head and pour their poison in and be believed. Getting on back to the war zones, the U.S. wants to intervene directly with Syria. They don't have a reason to do so. Syria's government has not asked them to come on in. Syria's government does not want the U.S. there. It does not want any of the coalition there. Syria's government asked Russia to come on in to deal with all these terrorist groups, which we now know were being backed, supported, and funded by the United States. So there's going to be a false flag. There has to be. There has to be something really horrendous happen that can be blamed on Assad, and it can't be another sarin gas attack because they've gone to that well way too many times. Way too many times. Now, here was one of those moments that you wish you were there to see in person, because the State Department was out there, Spokesslug was out there, Russia's committing war crimes, by dropping bombs that are killing civilians. And to his credit, Associated Press's Matt Lee posed a very simple question. Why is it a war crime for Russia to be bombing civilians in Syria and Saudi Arabia bombing civilians in Yemen is no big deal? And there was this very long silence. Well, because the civilians in Syria are good, and the civilians in Yemen are bad. That's why we're doing this. Just take our word for it. Now, Seymour Hersh, who's done a lot of really good work, almost all of it ignored by the corporate media, is out there with a new story saying that Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, was the person who approved the sending of sarin gas from Libya to the Syrian rebels to use on the Syrian people in an attempt to frame Bashar al-Assad. This was Hillary Clinton who did this. Okay, just taking care of a little business here. All right, so this is coming from Seymour Hersh. And finally, there's an article that came out from Investment Watch blog that really kind of says it all. The Clintons, Al Gore, the Bushes are all part of the same crime syndicate, which is what we've been saying all along. We have a narcocracy ruling this country. And there's always been a little bit of corruption from illicit substances, whether it was prohibition. It's called the politics of contraband. And it really took off back in the 1980s with that CIA gun and drug running operation into Nicaragua to aid the Contras against the Sandinistas. And the northern end of that gun and drug running pipeline was in Arkansas under then Governor Bill Clinton. And when the Iran-Contra scandal exploded into the public eye, and George Herbert Walker Bush knew that he could not survive a second term in the White House, he arranged with his CIA media buddies to basically hand the White House off to his partner in crime, the Democratic governor of Arkansas, Bill Clinton, the one man he knew would keep a lid on the secret. And that was when this unholy alliance was formed between the Bushes and the Clintons to rule as a dynastic duopoly, handing the White House off from Bush to Clinton to Clinton to Bush to Bush to Clinton. This year's election was supposed to be Jeb Bush against Hillary Clinton. But Jeb Bush cratered, Trump is in, and they're scared out of their minds. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And Andrea Mitchell is now making the rounds on the media. You know, say, you really, I mean, Podesta is the victim here. You shouldn't read any of his leaked emails. You're just increasing his suffering. He's the victim here. Really, you shouldn't go. I mean, desperation on the cusp of madness on that one. Now, apparently on CNN, when they were dealing with this now discredited story from Jessica Leeds, a Trump supporter happened to mention that not too long ago a video surfaced from Bill Clinton's campaign aircraft showing him reach up under the skirt of a flight attendant and grab a very delicate part of her anatomy, and she's trying to push his hand away, and she's even pointing at the fact that there's a camera there. And CNN just went ballistic. How can you even, what's wrong with you? I mean, just because you can see Clinton do it doesn't mean it's real. It's not real until we tell you it's real at the CNN. This is CNN, the Clinton News Network. All Clinton, all the time. All right, let's take a phone call. Gary in Tennessee, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, good to talk to you. It's been a while. You mentioned wet works a little bit earlier, and I had this reminiscence of a reaction I had during the debate when Hillary was blessing Donald's children. And I just wondered if you might have interpreted that as kind of a veiled threat the same way I did. I looked at it and just kind of creeped me out. What do you think?
Yeah, I did, but we already know that Donald Trump's children's lives have been threatened all during the primary season, and they have their own security details now. You know, Trump is learning really, really fast the true nature of the people he's up against, and he's being careful. But, yeah, at this point, I mean, we know that Bernie Sanders' family's lives were threatened when he started getting too close to Hillary Clinton. This is the way the Clintons and Bushes play. I mean, like I said, Game of Thrones has got nothing on these people.
Well, I'm glad I wasn't all alone in having that reaction. I'll let you get back to your show. Thanks for addressing.
All right, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. Now then, ramping up tensions with Russia, and I'm sorry to say this, but I think our future in terms of war is no longer going to be decided with the November election. If Hillary steals the White House, it's going to be all war all the time. If Donald Trump is able to overcome the massive election fraud, and remember, that's what happened with Brexit. They were rigging that election as hard as they could, but they couldn't reverse a landslide by the people. And that's why you need to tell everybody, get on out there and vote for Donald Trump. We need to overcome those who would steal our nation from us. And that includes not just our nation, but our wealth and the lives of our children in these wars. My concern is, and it looks like it's already happening, that the powers that be think Trump is actually going to win. They're going to start the shooting war with Russia and possibly China before he can take office and call it off. So we have this key neocon, Carl Gershman, who's headed the National Endowment for Democracy since 1983, and is saying it's time to summon the will to overthrow Russian President Vladimir Putin, and saying that this 10-year-old murder of a Russian journalist should be the inspiration or the justification, even though he acknowledges there is no evidence Putin had anything to do with it. But we can say he's responsible somehow, and therefore Putin must go. We've got to get rid of him and put somebody into Russia who will return the private central bank to private control the way it's supposed to be. Now, Russia knows the U.S. is getting very, very serious. Russia has ordered all of their officials in other countries to send their families back home. Any relatives they have to go home. They're telling foreign students studying in other countries, you might want to think about coming back here right now. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a phone call from Sean in North Carolina. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Well, like everybody else, I'm really worried about this election being stolen.
Yes.
And I wanted to, because you're the only person that's come out with the best thing I've heard so far. And it's not really getting out there because nobody else is mentioning it. And, you know, they're talking about the Department of Homeland Security coming in to monitor for hacking. But these machines cannot be hacked because they're not connected to the Internet. And I think that's one of the most important things people need to be told at this time.
Well, see, here's the thing that we need to point out here. Okay, all during the primaries, the hacking and election fraud was all helping Hillary Clinton. And now all of a sudden they're saying that Russia was behind all of this election hacking and they were helping Hillary Clinton. Now they're against her. That doesn't make any sense. That contradiction alone tells you you're being fed a line of bovine excrement.
Yeah, they're not wanting in there to monitor for hacking. They're wanting in there so they can fix it.
Yeah, you're talking about the Department of Homeland Security is now going to be overseeing.
Yeah, they're going to go in to make sure that the rigging goes smoothly.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're going to do. That's exactly what they're going to do. But again, we need to remember, election fraud can only swing an election a few percentage points one way or the other. It can't reverse a landslide, or everybody's going to know that's what happened, and the election was stolen, and that's when you're courting an armed revolution in this country. I'd like to avoid that. And a reminder, on Election Day, if you are voting for Donald Trump, dress in red. Red shirt, red scarf, whatever, or even just take some paper tape and put a T on the front of your clothing. Not while you're in the polling area. That would be a violation of election law. But after you voted, after you're out, just put a paper tape T. When people look around and see all the red shirts, all the red jackets, all the paper Ts, they're going to know what their neighborhood did in terms of the election. And if the corporate media comes on back and says, oh, well, you know, Hillary by a landslide, everyone's going to say, no, it wasn't. This was stolen somehow. And it's rather interesting. Donald Trump, when he was out there talking about Hillary Clinton has a potent weapon in the corporate media, he used that phrase, the corporate media. And Fox News is now copying him, saying that, you know, the question is the corporate media. And I've been saying all along, I refuse to call it the mainstream media because the mainstream has shifted over here. We're not the alternative media anymore. We're the independent media, and we're now the mainstream. And tacitly, Trump and Fox News have just acknowledged that. They're calling it the corporate media. They're not even saying it's mainstream anymore.
It's the only place that you can get the truth. And, you know, I guess with maybe get as many Rivero's Rangers to get the word out there, call all the radio shows and just keep hammering the point that these things cannot be hacked. So
they can't be hacked over the Internet.
People can say, you know, it's ridiculous. We don't need the Homeland Security to come in here.
Sean, let's be accurate. The election machines cannot be hacked remotely over the Internet. They can be hacked, but it has to be somebody who's there in the polling place with a memory card or a software update or whatever else is going on. But the idea...
And that makes them look even more ridiculous because, you know, they keep saying Russia's doing this. Now they're going to have to convince the people that somehow Russia's flying over here going to every one of the ballots rigging it.
Well, my concern, and a lot of people are concerned, is that if Hillary implodes, and she may, and Trump is able to overcome the election rigging, that Barack Obama may just stand up and say, well, we know this Trump victory was manufactured by the evil Russians, and so we're going to nullify this election, and I will stay on as president during this period where we have to rehold the elections maybe 5 or 10 years down the road.
I can see that. You know, I have a bad feeling that it doesn't matter. They're not going to let him in there. They're not going to do it.
No, what's going to happen?
This whole country, they're not going to let that man take office.
What's going on here right now is we are seeing the U.S. federal government begin to shatter the way the former Soviet Union government did. They've destroyed their credibility with the people. The people don't trust them. We know the elections are crooked. We're seeing the beginning of the end of this federal government. It's going to collapse. And we, the American people, are going to have to take care of each other for the 4 months of chaos that's going to result, out of which we will build a new government in this land that goes back to those original constitutional principles. First and foremost, that power is not to be centralized in Washington, D.C., and no more private central banks. That's going to be my big campaign issue. When we start building the new America, no more private central banks. Only the government has the authority to issue the currency. It must be based on value. And if the government has to borrow money during a particular administration, there's a constitutional requirement that it be repaid in full before the end of that administration cycle, or the elected officers become personally liable for that debt. Think about that one for a while. There's fiscal responsibility finally happening.
Mike, I have one more quick question for you, and that is, if they are indeed successful at stealing this thing, at that point, what option do we have to put an end to it? Is it the American people is going to have to uprise and use the Second Amendment after that? Is that our only chance in getting rid of it?
Do you remember what John F. Kennedy used to say? Those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. I'm absolutely opposed to that happening, but at this point, I can't see any way to stop it. I don't see any way to stop it. If they steal this election and give it to Hillary Clinton, I think we're going to start seeing violence in the streets of America, and it's not going to be this manufactured Black Lives Matter staged riots. It's going to be the American people basically going after anybody who represents the government in any form. Certainly there's going to be a lot of violence against police officers after all the violence they've been doing to the American people, the civil forfeiture laws. The rest of that, probably people go down to the airport, grab some of those TSA goons and give them a good coating of tar and feathers.
So, in essence, that's the only thing that's going to remove it if it's stolen.
Well, unless you want to spend the rest of your life on your knees as slaves to Hillary and her people.
Oh, no, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
If she steals it, the only thing to get her out of there at that point is something like that. There is no taking it to court and proving election fraud. That's gone, right?
Yeah, I mean, the country that we all thought that we lived in, unfortunately, is long gone. Okay.
I mean, Putin's pretty much saying, telling America, either vote, get Trump in there, or there's going to be nuclear war.
Well, he's absolutely right.
I agree with I see that.
Yeah, I mean, right now we're just the same situation we were in 1907 and 1929. The bankers and the government have broken the economy hopelessly, and they either need a war to revive it, which means force more borrowing from the private central banks, or at least to have something to blame it on. It's not our fault that you're all starving and hungry. It's the evil Russians. They did it. The Chinese are the cause of your poverty because they make good products at lower price than we can here in America. How dare they do that? Okay?
Thanks, Mike.
All right, we're going to switch over to Mark in Oregon. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Mark, are you there? I guess we lost him. Yeah. Fran in Washington State. Aloha, Fran. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha nui nui.
Aloha nui nui.
What is that nui nui part?
It means more. Aloha nui means more, love, whatever. Nui nui is simply you pile it on more. The leaders in Hawaii are called the Ali'i. The leaders above them are the Ali'i Nui, and then the king of all the Hawaiian Islands is the Ali'i Nui Nui.
Okay. Oh, by the way, before I get started, I wanted to tell you that I saw Auntie Pia.
Yes.
Is that her name?
Yes.
Auntie Pia went to No Dapple and was standing with the Standing Rock Sioux.
Yes.
It was wonderful. She's a beautiful woman. Anyway, I wanted to say, in response to the other caller that was talking about the machines can't be hacked, they're not on the Internet. Well, years ago, I saw court testimony by a software engineer.
Yes.
He was under oath, and he said that he was caused by Diebold to write material into the program to hack things, and it was not you couldn't see it, you couldn't notice it, it was invisible. And that came out during his testimony in court. And I saw the video. I don't know. It must be around there somewhere.
Yeah, I just found it again here on YouTube. And, yeah, it was a court case. And basically this programmer, Eugene Curtis, testified that he was ordered to write code to allow these electronic voting machines to change the outcome of the election. They are incredibly crooked. You need to see that documentary, Hacking Democracy, that was on HBO, and it's still all over the net. You need to find that. You need to share it with everybody that you know. Those electronic machines are designed to steal elections, and they're very, very good at it. Frankly, we need to take sledgehammers to those darn things. And like I said, I've got a way to guarantee honest elections in this country. And that is, first of all, you've got to reinstate the voter ID laws so that only legal citizens may vote, and they may only vote one time. And that everybody votes in their home precinct, and the votes are counted there at the end of the day in front of everybody who cares to stick around to watch. And the totals are posted right there for people to write down and copy and take with them. And then when those results are totaled together, the local newspapers will put the total results for the county or the city and all those precinct lists. And then when the state does their totals, the city totals are all posted. So every single American can follow their immediate precinct where they know there was an honest count of the election all the way up the chain to the national totals. That's how you guarantee the accuracy of the vote, or at least go a long way to improving it. The Tantrum Squad just came back. I must be doing something right if they're attacking me this hard.
Okay. And by the way, before I shut down, we missed you an awful lot, and we're really glad you're back.
Well, I'm getting that from a lot of people here, but at the same time, I did need a few days away because this is like a 12, 14-hour-a-day job, 7 days a week, and I'm getting to be an old guy.
Well, we love you. Okay, I'm hanging up. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks an awful lot. Okay, apparently Mark in Oregon. Oh, we got to take a break for commercials, and Mark from Oregon is back. We're going to take his phone call, and one more from Steve in California after these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here, and we're going to go to Mark in, I forget what city that was. Mark, what did you have on your mind?
Yes, Mike, it's in Oregon.
It's in Oregon, okay.
I got cut off just as you were pushing the button to get me on. I've mentioned to you for a while now that the closeness of the polls is just basically plausible deniability of a steal.
Well, for the corporate media polls, that's certainly true, but we've caught them oversampling Democrats, oversampling women. They're manufacturing the numbers to be able to go on out there and say, oh, yes, Hillary's winning, Hillary's ahead, Hillary's doing really good. And yet every single poll not connected with the corporate media has Trump winning by a landslide.
That's right. My solution would be simply that Donald Trump would pay to have at least one independent poll done that he sets up, and to counteract the crooked polls, because, as you mentioned before, it's a staggering amount that he's ahead. And I think this needs to be demonstrated to the American people, and I think that really exposes the effort that they're going to put forth to steal the election and do it successfully if these polls are not disputed. So it's really up to Donald Trump. He's the only one that can do this on his own behalf, and, of course, in a much larger sense, our behalf, that he would be the president, to actually expose the falsity of the polls by setting up his own polls. What do you think?
Well, if he sets up his own polls, Hillary's campaign is simply going to say, well, he's buying the poll results that he wants. So I think Trump needs to rely on the polls being run by the independent media. And apparently, okay, we've got all kinds of, oh boy, they must really be scared. Hillary's hackers are, I've never seen an attack this intense, and it's just amazing what they're trying to do here. Okay, anyway, I didn't mean to be distracted. The good news is, of course, is that all this added traffic coming into my website from Hillary's people is actually driving up my ad revenues. Shh, Don't tell them. They might actually stop.
Mike, I really think that the polls need to be exposed. If they're not, Trump's going to lose the election. They're going to steal it. It's just that simple.
Well, they're going to steal it, but the problem is we're all going to know it was stolen. And that's really...
They'll still steal it. They'll still steal it and install it.
Yeah,
right
but they're risking riots in the streets is what they're doing.
Well, to stop from going there, I still believe the polls can be exposed by some legitimate polls set up by Donald Trump.
We do it all the time. No, we don't. Trump doesn't need to do it. We run polls all the time on our website. Drudge is running polls. All of these, station affiliates that aren't particularly loyal to the network are running these polls. There are literally dozens and dozens of polls run by organizations that are not connected to the corporate media or the Clinton machine.
How do they get exposure past the bought media and the bought polls? That's the question.
They get exposure on the websites. They get exposure on the independent media. And remember, we've got a larger audience than the corporate media. They're all coming here now. All right, we got to take a break here. Thank you very much for the phone call. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And we're looking at this attempt to get a shoot. First of all, it's hour number 3. And we're looking at this attempt to literally get World War III going for real before Donald Trump can take the White House. They want the war, and they don't want you, the American people, to have anything to say about it on Election Day. If Hillary steals the election, there will be war. If Donald Trump is able to overcome all the election fraud and become the president, they will start the war before he can take office. That's coming. So we're seeing this article out of Sputnik News saying that all normal U.S.-Russian channels of cooperation are effectively frozen. There's no communication going on whatsoever. It's just all this talk about Putin is bad and we've got to do this and we've got to oust him. And we had that neocon out there saying it's time to remove Vladimir Putin. How dare he refuse to run Russia for the benefit of the private central banks? Does he not know the natural order of the universe? So, now over in Great Britain, Boris Johnson, who I certainly liked over his Brexit comments, he seems to have drunk the Kool-Aid on this whole idea about war with Russia. And he was out there calling for protests at the Russian embassy. It drew a lot of criticism from the former head of MI6, saying that we have to be careful about the safety of diplomatic staff because that could start a cascade of events that nobody wants to deal with. But they needn't have worried because apparently only one person actually showed up for the planned protest at the Russian embassy, which tells us nobody is buying this Russia bad, Russia evil stuff. By the way, a little bit of an unhappy anniversary. It's now been 15 years of war by the United States in Afghanistan. 15 years. Longer than World War I and World War II put together, and it is still a hopeless quagmire. Now remember, back in the 1990s, the Project for the New American Century, and they've got a new name and a new branding now, but it's still the same bunch of people. They were literally talking about an entire century, 100 years of war to create the new world order under U.S. domination. Of course, Israel has something to say about that. They want the new seat of global government to be in Jerusalem. Turning to the economy, Volkswagen is getting ready to cut 25,000 jobs over the next decade. They apparently have not recovered all that well from some of their scandals. Over in Houston, their economy is starting to head into a decline. The Texans are cutting back. Now, HSBC is issuing warnings of a coming severe stock market crash. But before you start opening up those windows and looking at the pavement, remember, HSBC is a crooked bank. They were the ones who were caught laundering drug money while James Comey was on their board. They got that sweetheart deal from the U.S. Attorney for New York, Loretta Lynch, who was rewarded with promotion to Attorney General. Comey is now head of the FBI. So HSBC, given their high moral standings, may be ready to do a pump and dump. They may be short selling all kinds of stocks. Then they issue a crash warning, the market goes down, and they clean up. It's hard to find anybody on Wall Street who's doing business ethically, morally, legally. They're literally surviving on fraud. Now, over in the European Union, Schengen is pretty much over and done with. EU officials are establishing a new border force. The borders are going back up on the 28 nations in the bloc. 26 of the nations have already suspended passport-free travel. When you go from one country in Europe to another, you have to show your papers. Your papers, please. All your papers are not in order. Take them away. And so what the poor people of Europe have right now is all the downside of the European Union, a tyrannical dictatorship in Brussels that is unelectable, unimpeachable, slavery to the European Central Bank, and all the things that they were told the EU was going to be, an open trading area, open single contiguous freedom of motion, all that's gone. All the good things the Europeans thought they were getting when they joined the EU, they're all gone. Now, up in Sweden, very ugly story. Apparently, there was a woman in a wheelchair. She's in her 30s, and she had asked to use the toilet at an asylum center after sharing a taxi with one of the residents. And she went in, and when she was done with the restroom, she was attacked by 7 of these migrants who proceeded to rape her continuously for several hours. The migrants who were arrested were released because the prosecutors, who are very much on board this bring in the refugees and distort all of our nationality, came up with the idea that this victim, disabled woman in a wheelchair, didn't do enough to fight off her attackers, therefore it's kind of her fault. I thought this blame the rape victim thing went out in the 1990s. But I mean, that's part of the New World Order, to just blur all the populations of Earth together so we forget who we are, and that makes us easier to control. And this is the price the people of Europe are paying for the open borders. Except the borders aren't open for them anymore. They got to show passports. The refugees, they come on in unimpeded and start attacking the women. And that's a small price to pay for the New World Order and a global community where we're all going to sit around the fire and hug each other and sing Kumbaya. All right, we're going to do a shout-out now to our on-air affiliates who are rejoining our network. We're talking about immigration, globalism, the New World Order. Interestingly enough, over in Spain, they have been without a national government for 280 days. And the Spanish people think it's the greatest thing to have happened to the country since its 40-year-old democracy began. In the words of a language teacher, Felix Pastor, no government, no thieves. I think that's eloquent. It's going to go in the quotes file. Now, you need to remember, Belgium was without a federal government for 589 days with the same result. They loved it. They had freedom. They weren't being plundered and pillaged by the government. I think it's time we gave that a try here. I think it's time that we go back to being a confederation of states, and the states have the authority, and we don't really need that central federal government. Actually, what we really need is a cash for clunkers program for the federal government, where we take our old, bloated, useless, inefficient government, we take it over to the trash yard, put it in that little machine, and it crunches it down to a coffee table. And then we're all given a check for $50,000 with which to go out and buy a new, smaller, more economical government. I think that would be a really, really good idea, don't you? Over in the Chad Republic, they just hit ExxonMobil with a $74 billion fine. And the court hit them with a fine following a complaint from the Ministry of Finance that the consortium led by Exxon had basically been ignoring their tax obligations and the payment of royalty fees. And they add the punitive damages on top of that, and it came to $74 billion. That's 7 times the entire annual gross domestic product of the entire Chad Republic. That would be like ordering a U.S. court ordering a U.S. company to pay over $100 trillion in a fine, which is a really good way to erase the national debt, I think. Now, there's a very revealing article on WhatReallyHappened.com, and it has to do with the corporate media, which even Trump and Fox News are saying it's the corporate media. It's not mainstream anymore. It's just the corporate media. So there's this article, and it appeared in Zero Hedge, Liars for Hire, and it's basically a story, it's a second-person story, about somebody who literally went to work for one of the corporate-owned online presences and learned very, very quickly that it's all about propaganda. And so we're not exaggerating when we say they're all prostitutes and correspondents in the corporate media. They are paid to lie. They're literally for sale. And it's a good article to read talking about this guy's experiences. Now, CNN has denounced Donald Trump for endangering reporters' lives, for not denouncing the crowd of supporters chanting CNN sucks, which they do. But Donald Trump is not endangering the reporters' lives. CNN is, by ordering them to go on out blatantly lying to support Hillary Clinton. Yeah, their personal safety is at risk, and Donald Trump had nothing to do with it. And if you work for that corporate media, you need to understand the danger you are in, because the American people are fed up with the corporate media lying, twisting things, spinning, selling us stuff we don't want, don't need, pushing us toward war. And when it breaks through into violence, yes, those representatives of the corporate media are going to be in serious, serious danger. But Donald Trump didn't do it. CNN did it. ABC did it. CBS did it. NBC did it. Fox News is doing it. Bloomberg is doing it. They don't care about your individual lives. I mean, how hard is it to get somebody who can type up a good story real quickly for close to minimum wage? Okay, let's see. Let me send a message to our hard-working, overworked, underpaid control room technician. Now then, there was a lawsuit that was seeking, under the Freedom of Information Act, to get the list of graduates from the U.S. School of the Americas. Now, a lot of people who've been observing this very closely say it's really the school of dictators, or the school of assassins, because the U.S. needs some place to train the puppet rulers that they're going to insert into these conquered countries. And this is where it's being done. Now, in the past, the names of the graduates were known, and inevitably they traced to high government officials in places like Chile, under Pinochet, or Iran under the Shah, and so they stopped releasing those names because it was an embarrassment. It was exposing the degree to which the U.S. government is, in fact, engaged in this campaign of regime change and overthrow for the benefit of American corporations. Unfortunately, the U.S. Court of Appeals has just ruled that the Pentagon does not have to reveal those names. It's none of the American people's business that the U.S. government is training some of the worst dictators in the world. Okay, the tantrum people have just come back. You know something? I'm not taking this personal, but if they're attacking the independent media this hard, it tells me something really bad is about to break. Bad for Hillary. I have a feeling something's about to come on out, and they're just, it feels like panic to me. It just feels like panic to me. Now then, another judge has ruled that former CIA officers can be questioned in the torture case. This was brought by the ACLU. And basically, the judge came on out and said, in order to maintain civilian control over what's going on, the judicial system has to be allowed to handle claims of CIA torture and other war crimes, including when those claims involve high-level government officials. So I'll bet you that judge is going to have a fishing accident real soon. Down in Houston, there's a big stink down there where apparently one of the operators of the 911 phone system was caught intentionally hanging up on callers during emergencies because she wasn't in the mood to help at that moment. I mean, come on. If you're a 911 operator, I mean, you're not there for the money. You're there because you genuinely want to help people. Why else would you take that job? Now, there's another story on Blacklisted News, how a facial recognition mismatch can ruin your life. And they're talking about this guy who was accused of being a bank robber on the basis of one of those security videos, which are always blurry. They're low resolution. The bank robber was wearing a hat at the time, and the police said, yeah, we think it's this guy. And they did a SWAT team raid on him, broke 2 of his teeth, put him in jail. And he had proof that he was in some other part of the state at the time doing his job. So they had to let him out. And then they came on back with an FBI facial recognition expert who said, oh, no, that's absolutely the guy. That's one of the dangerous things about a corrupted government. They have to be right no matter how wrong they are. And we see that time and time again. We're seeing with Obamacare. It doesn't matter how much it fails, even to the point where Bill Clinton said it was broken. They're just going to pour more and more money at it and declare it to be a success. And if you don't believe Obamacare is a success, well, then you're just being a hater. You're just proving how much you hate Obama because he's black. We're going to go ahead and open up the phone line, so if there's something you want to share with us, now would be a good time to call on in. As you know, Samsung has had a major embarrassment with their Samsung Galaxy Note 7, a problem with exploding batteries. They've replaced a lot of phones. Some of the replacement phones have exploded. They've now suspended all production of the Galaxy Note 7. They've done a complete recall. They've even gone so far as to send customers fireproof boxes in which to return the phones. Now, interestingly enough, when we were boarding our flights over this last weekend, along with the usual, you can't have this in the cabin, you can't have that, there was now a special mention on the recording. Galaxy Note 7s may not be in checked luggage. They may only be in your carry-on. They must be left off the entire time of flight. You can't turn them on. You can't charge them. That's how serious this thing was. Now, somebody sent me a video about how easy it is to hack the battery software. And their spin was that Samsung was actually the victim of a massive hack. And I don't agree with that theory because these lithium batteries have a terrible track record. They've been the cause of major, major problems with the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. But it does expose a serious potential problem with the growing Internet of Things, in which companies who are struggling with poor sales might actively hack and sabotage their competitors' products to gain market share and profits. And you thought planned obsolescence was bad? Now you're going to buy a product and that company's competitors are going to try and break it when you get it home so that you'll throw it away and say, I'm going to go to this other company's products. I mean, look at the trends we've seen in corporate thinking. That's a good reason to not have any kind of outside connection with any of your appliances, because it will happen. Companies will hire professional hackers. Go on out and find a way to wreck this entire line of products so that we can take over the marketplace. It's going to happen sooner or later. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Now then, coming up on a commercial here real quick, Facebook, as you know, fired its human editors because they were biasing the trending news for political gain. They put in a software system, but for some reason, the Facebook's trending system is now trending fake news stories more than anything else. There's a problem in the system. We know about it, and we are working on it. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials. We will be back with a phone call after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Now, do you remember earlier in the year when they were trying to get Donald Trump to drop out and let Ted Cruz be the GOP nominee, which would have handed the White House to Hillary Clinton because Ted Cruz cannot serve as President of the United States of America because of the Constitution? And there was a lawsuit filed out in California by a woman who supposedly had been a victim of Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein down at Epstein's little island. Now, we know Epstein was a real slimeball, but he was very, very rich, and he hung out with a lot of people on a business level. Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, one of the British princes. And this lawsuit generated a huge amount of headlines. Donald Trump sued for rape by anonymous complainant. And the case was tossed out of court in California because the address given for the plaintiff turned out to be a boarded-up house, and the phone number given for the plaintiff turned out to be disconnected and had previously belonged to a dentist. So, never one to admit defeat when you're lying like that. They refiled the case in New Jersey, and it fell apart again because the court demanded the plaintiff be made available to the court. You can't just come on in and say, you know, I'm representing this person who can't show up and testify on her own behalf. So it failed there. Apparently the case has now been refiled in New York, and they demand a jury trial. And the situation seems to be is they don't actually have a plaintiff. They're trying to create one as a legal fiction. Jane Doe has signed all the paperwork. Oh, yes, we have somebody who signed Jane Doe, therefore it must be real. They're just piling this stuff on. I think the plan here is they're going to bribe as many women as it takes to just flood Donald Trump with all these allegations of sexual impropriety. But you know something? It's self-defeating. Because like I said before, with Bill Clinton, it's always been a part of his character. He's always been groping and grabbing and kissing and everything. There's no surprise when somebody comes on out and says, we have a video of Bill Clinton groping a flight attendant. Yeah, big deal. It's about as newsworthy as saying there's going to be rain somewhere in the country today. But think about Donald Trump. He's been a billionaire surrounded by thousands of beautiful women all his life. And it wasn't until he became a threat to the Clinton machine that all of a sudden, oh, he's a racist, he's a sexual monster. And they're just laying it on with a trowel. But I think most people are going to realize that this kind of behavior doesn't just appear overnight. It stinks to high heaven. And at this point, the corporate media that's gone along with this stuff, they've literally bet their entire future. Because if Trump is able to overcome the election fraud next month, all of these established corporate media outlets are going to be destroyed. And they did it themselves. Trump doesn't have to do a thing. The American people are simply going to say, I'm not going to bother wasting my time with the New York Times or the Washington Post or Fox or CNN anymore. We're going to go on over to the Internet. We're going to go to WhatReallyHappened.com. We're going to go to Republic Broadcasting because we can get the truth there. I mean, they've gone so far overboard. There's no turning back now. And they're getting more and more desperate as we get closer to the election. All right, let's grab some phone calls here. Steve in California, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, just to add to, you had a caller talk about the hacking of the system itself, the voting system. The clip she would be referring to, at least the one I know, because I played it on my show, it's a long clip, but it's a Tallahassee computer programmer, under oath, and telling you how the system is vulnerable and how he was told to build the system with a back door in it. So you can go online, just look at Tallahassee computer programmer about hacking into Diable computer voting system.
We just put the video up on WhatReallyHappened.com, which triggered another attack from the Tantrum Squad.
Yeah, it's a scam. Hey, thanks again, Michael.
All right, thanks an awful lot there. We're going to switch over to Frank in London. Aloha, Frank. Well, actually, no, we're coming up on a commercial break. Frank, stay on the line. We're going to come back to you as soon as we finish this next commercial break. Here's an interesting story. Apparently, a student wrote software that has found a new minor planet beyond Pluto. Good for this kid. We got to take a break for commercials. Back with phone calls after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And apparently, Fox News is now saying that Hillary Clinton has finally responded to Judicial Watch's questions that she was compelled by the court to answer. And maybe that's the reason why Hillary's online goon squad is in the lather that they're in because of what's going on. They're clearly hitting the panic button. Apparently, there is a national radio host, Dana Lash, who is telling her listeners, you should not read any of the WikiLeaks information because it was acquired illegally, and if you read it, then you are receiving stolen property, and you could be in trouble. I mean, look how scared they are right now. I mean, they're back attacking my server yet again. They're absolutely in a blind panic. You can just smell the fear coming out of those people. All right, phone calls. Frank in London, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, Mike. Hi, Mike. I just want to talk about if you're aware that the British people, a significant number of British people, are behind Russia and supporting what Russia is doing in Syria because they're not stupid. They're well aware that the British government are lying to them, and these idiotic chest thumpers we have in the parliament talking about we should bomb or attack Russia. These people, they just entertainment value. That's all, nothing more.
Yeah, well, like I said, Boris Johnson called for a protest outside the Russian embassy. One person turned up, and it shows that the British people are not falling for the Russia bashing any more than anybody else. And apparently Boris just didn't realize he needed to hire a mob to show up the way Hillary Clinton's campaign does.
Just before I go, I thought Bill Clinton, his expression when Donald Trump mentioned his shenanigans with the 12-year-old girl, his face, he looked like a rabbit that got caught in the headlights. The way his face looked, I thought that was priceless.
Well, you know, I really do think that Donald Trump ought to have Danny Williams in the audience for the third debate. And again, he really turned that second debate around. I mean, the word we're getting is the Hillary campaign was all ready to start celebrating that they had destroyed him in the second debate. And yet, of course, he turned it around. He came out on top. Again, all of the polls not connected with the corporate media or the Hillary campaign showed Trump winning that second debate by a landslide. My understanding is Hillary literally threw all of her people on the campaign plane and ordered the pilot to take off so they could start serving liquor and get everybody drunk, because apparently the mood of the Hillary campaign was just absolutely vile. And I hope they didn't have any ashtrays on that aircraft, because Hillary loves to throw those things, and that's a bad idea at 30,000 feet.
Oh, well, now it's just damage limitation now. That's all they can go for, nothing else now. They've got nothing left.
Well, it's going to be an intense few weeks down to the election, but I'll tell you, if Hillary's online goon squad has their knickers this much in a twist over my website, something's about to break, and it could be this story where Hillary has just responded to Judicial Watch's questions. And, of course, they're going to be made public, and we're going to pull it all apart. We're going to compare it with all of this information coming out of these leaked emails, whether it's from DNC leaks or WikiLeaks or Anonymous or Guccifer 2.0. We're going to be looking at the facts here, and Hillary could be in trouble, and that certainly would justify them hitting the panic button to try and find some way to, if not shut down, at least make reaching the independent media so difficult most people will give up.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Mike.
All right, thank you. We're going to switch to Dave in Long Island. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. How you doing?
Doing good.
I've been doing better, Mike, because I got the latest Windows 10 upgrade, and it totally destroyed my computer. Totally destroyed it. The hard drive is clicking and all this kind of stuff, so I don't even know if I can even get it working again. But they were very nice. They sent me the operating system in an email, and I was like, why should I do all this legwork to repair my computer when you just killed it?
Well, so that Bill Clinton could be that Bill Gates could be the richest person on earth, and Paul Allen could buy himself another yacht. I mean, what do you expect them to spend money on quality control and verification of the product? Yeah, again, this goes back to the early days of the computer industry, where IBM and Apple lobbied the government for indemnification for product liability, because back then computers were a new and very fragile, delicate industry that had to be protected. Well, that's not the case anymore. This is an industry that's hugely wealthy, very powerful and influential, and more to the point, we have become dependent on these computer systems and the software, to the point where the poor quality of the products is hampering our ability to compete with other countries. I mean, the stuff is so bad, Russia has now banned all Microsoft products, along with GMO. You know, it's just being more made-in-America junk that can't be relied on. And, you know, like I said, we tried Windows 10 here. I wanted to give it a fair shot. We literally wound up having to throw away the computer that we allowed to upgrade to Windows 10. And, you know, we can't afford to throw away computers, by the way. You know, we're always coming up short here.
Throw away mine. Yeah, I don't have money for that, but I got to throw away mine now. But you know what? I had my AT&T wireless account on my Android, so I had that as backup. But guess what? They canceled my account because I was calling into certain radio stations too much. And that's American Telephone and Telegraph. Yeah, they decided that I'm not allowed to call. I have unlimited calling, but I'm not allowed. I can call somebody in Japan for 5 hours, but I can't call to certain radio shows, maybe even this one. But the other one I was calling into was one that you used to be on. They didn't like that, so they canceled my account. They canceled it, and they told me so.
Yeah.
So, in any case, I have a new terminology for them, and anybody who wants to censor the internet, who wants to stifle free speech. You know how you have the term rhino and dino, you know, Democratic name only and Republican name, which doesn't matter anymore. It's superfluous. It does, you know, why bother even saying that? But I have a new one. It's called American in name only, and the sound of it sounds just like they are. ANO, American in name only. That's for all the people who want to stifle free speech. They're all ANOs.
Okay, well, I like that. I really do like that a lot here. And the only reason they're still maintaining this Republican versus Democrat illusion is to convince the American people that we still have some kind of a choice every election, but we don't. And a lot of the reason people are turning away from the establishment politicians and they're going to Donald Trump, and it's the same for both Republicans and Democrats. We have been through election after election after election where they're promising us certain things. They never, ever happen. Okay? And you know, I agree with that statement. Donald Trump is a giant middle finger by the American people toward the establishment. And the establishment is fighting for its life right now, because they realize if we can get Trump past the election fraud into the White House, it's going to be the beginning of tearing down that oligarchy. And that's actually going to mean more work for us. We're going to have to work even harder to support Trump while he's doing this. If Trump wins the presidency, it does not signal that you can sit on the couch and wait for Trump to fix things, because he can't do it on his own. He's going to need all of our help. If for no other reason than to constantly call up our members of Congress and glare at them and say, you do what this guy tells you. You do what we, the people, tell you. Forget about Israel. Forget about Wall Street. You do what we tell you to do, or you are out your next election. And we're going to have to keep up the pressure. Okay? All right. I guess we lost Dave in Long Island. We're going to switch over to Charles in Columbia, Maryland. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. I'm slightly disappointed with alternative media. Seems to me it's becoming like the mainstream. It seems like everybody is singing the same tune. There's no real critical thought being given to this election. I mean, I don't like.
Wait a minute. First of all, we're not the alternative media. We're the independent media. Second of all, I think you're going to see a lot more critical analysis of what's going on with our government in the independent media than you're ever going to see in the corporate media. So I don't know where you're coming from with this.
Well, I mean, you guys, Donald Trump could literally take a dump in the middle of Times Square, and one of you guys would go and pick it up with your bare hands.
Yeah,
and,
Charles, thank you very much. Charles, thank you very much. We're going to let you go. I mean, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I mean, Hillary Clinton could drop live kittens into a blender, and the corporate media would say she's advocating for kitchen safety. It's obviously one of the paid shills out there on overtime. Well, I guess it beats working at the local fast food place. John in Barbados, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Nui nui and all that.
Yes.
To be honest, Michael, this election is like watching a bunch of kids in the local bathroom playing with each other. It's ridiculous. Everybody on this planet is laughing at this American election.
Yes.
I'm serious. To say that that America is populated by the irrational masses of functional illiterates, I'm tending to agree with that, looking at the blogs and things that's happening in the American news media and even on the corporate, the independent news sites. It's ridiculous. And this nonsense with this missile attack on Yemen, I mean, we just can't believe a word the government says. Obviously, the Yemenis have attacked 3 Saudi vessels, which are similar, and they bought them from America anyway, and sunk 2 and so severely damaged 1.
Yeah.
Do we honestly think they'd miss the American vessel?
No, of course they
not.
wouldn't. Of course they wouldn't. It was a false flag. It's the Lusitania all over. It's Pearl Harbor all over. At this point, every American has to develop the moral courage to stand up and say, this government is lying to us about everything. What are we going to do about it?
Well, just to confirm, I've been looking at the media in the UK. As far as this nonsense with going up against Russia over Syria with the RAF, people, 71% were absolutely opposed to it.
Yes.
And, this is the sort of numbers that I think actually were achieved by the Brexit, i.e., let's get out, 71%. And they just fiddled those figures. These figures I don't think they can fiddle because I think it's even higher than 71%.
The people in Europe, okay, for them, the world wars are a real presence. You can, to this very day, you can go to certain places in France, Britain, Germany, and you can see the scars of those wars. For Americans, it's this abstract thing. The last actual war we had on our own soil was the Civil War, and most of that's been erased. There's a couple of nice memorials that still survive, and now they're erasing that. They're trying to erase the memory of the Confederacy and the Civil War. And so Americans have a very abstracted view of these wars. The World War I and World War II were fought well away from our country. And, there were some ships that were sunk off the American coast by German submarines, but that's as close as it got, along with the Japanese experimental balloon bombs that started a forest fire up in Washington State. But we haven't had full-on frontline combat, in this country, certainly not in the modern era with modern weapons. But the people in Europe, they know what it looks like. The older people there, they got to see the tail end of big mistake number 2, and I'm sure they've passed that on to their children. I know that my family that served in World War II went to great pains to pass on to me what a terrible thing it was. And so all of a sudden, now that this potential war with Russia has moved away from being kind of abstract and political and Cold War-ish, and now that they're talking about actual shooting, you're seeing people in Europe, they don't want to have anything to do with this thing. Certainly not for the great United States of America to once again impose its will on the rest of the planet. They don't want anything to do with that.
Well, I think the real problem is, and I don't think America understands that, things like submarines with nuclear weapons on board are surrounding your coast. This isn't going to be fought just in Europe. This is going to be planet-wide.
Of course it will be. With the ICBMs, the U.S. has abandoned the no first use doctrine. They're openly talking about starting a war with nuclear weapons.
Well, the thing is, if it starts with the nuclear weapons, the first thing that's going to happen is these Russian submarines off the East Coast, 30, 40 miles out, will launch theirs. Before you can react, Washington, D.C. will be vaporized.
Well, hang on. I want to back up here a little bit. I don't know that Russia actually has ballistic missile submarines that close to our country. I know they shut down the old SOSUS warning nets, but there are other systems of ocean surveillance, upgraded SIRTAS boats, and so forth and so on. I don't think Putin would be that crazy to send submarines off of our coast. That would be another provocation. And he doesn't need to. Their longest-range nuclear missiles can be launched from the pier side in Russia itself. They could launch from the docks and still hit the United States.
Well, what I'm talking about, for example, is this new Borsa submarine. Even the Pentagon calls it the black hole because it's virtually impossible to detect.
Okay.
So these things are available, and America is just marching into this world war.
And we have all this junk weaponry. We have all this junk weaponry that's hideously expensive to replace when we lose them, and we're going to lose them because they're not built very well.
Well, the thing is, even if they go conventional, before very long, with the reliability of the F-22s and the F-16s not being that great, they'll soon be running out of conventional methods of defense.
Yeah, I agree, and that's when they'll go to the nukes. John, I'm going to let you go here. We got a commercial break. We got one more caller we're going to take before the end of our program today. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And before we take this final phone call for the day here, a couple of stories are breaking. First of all, we are hearing that President Obama is going to be meeting with his senior military tomorrow to discuss Syria, meaning what they're going to decide is whether or not to do a full-on invasion. And if they do a full-on invasion, we can expect there's going to be some kind of a false flag so that you gullible American people will just go along with another war on another country and throw what's left of your money and the lives of your children into the combat zone, like the obedient little slaves you are all supposed to be. Okay? Now, the other story I wanted to put on out, this is just now coming out. It's turning out, or it's being rumored at this point, but people have been looking at how Paul Ryan has been interacting with Donald Trump all during this whole thing about, he used a bad word about a woman and the rest of it. And there are now reports saying that Paul Ryan's advisor, Dan Senior, is behind all the leaks, that he was the one who leaked the Trump sex talk tape to the Washington Post. And like I told the Washington Post, I wish I had a paid subscription so I could cancel it. Let's go to the phones here. Mary in New Jersey, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi. I just want to say how the media has lost really any trace of credibility. I used to watch all these news shows a long time ago, get 3 newspapers a day, read all the magazines until I saw the stories were kind of repetitive. And I wanted to say something else, too, and tell a little story, because I noticed, my grandchildren, they were in the trampoline in the spring. And they were all downing Trump. So people, I said, who talked to you about that? You know, people at school. Anyhow, I was with my the 7-year-old. He just turned 7, and in the pool this summer, and I mentioned to him, why are you saying stuff like that? You know, and I said, you know, if Hillary wins, this will be the end of America. And he said, do you have any proof of it? So I told him some proof of it, and then his mom came out and said, Mom, I'm voting for Hillary for Trump.
Okay, we have a really, really bad phone connection. We have a really bad phone connection here. So I'm going to have to let you go. We're almost at the end of the show anyway. And so thank you very much for the phone call. What's a couple of quick program notes. The lovely Lady Claire will be with us in hour number 3 tomorrow. And also for those of you who are staying tuned for John Stadmiller's show, he has had, well, just like I had to take off the last 3 days, John has to be away today, and I'm going to be taking the microphone for the next 2 hours on his show as well. And the Tantrum Squad is back at it again. Something's about ready to break. And it's got to be really nasty. I've never seen them work this hard to try and take my site down. And that, to me, is very, very telling. Something's about to happen here. All right, there's the music. Time for me to get on out of here. And, of course, I'm going to be back after the station identification for the John Stadmiller show. So stay tuned.